What's the point of Leviticus? Welcome to Bible on the Go with Dr. Dan. And this time we're going to talk about the third book in the Bible. After Genesis and Exodus comes this very interesting book, Leviticus. And the book of the Leviticus belongs to the period in Israel's history when the people of God were encamped at Mount Sinai following their miraculous deliverance from slavery in Egypt, which we refer to as the Exodus. Moses had received the Ten Commandments and other parts of the law directly from God. He also built and furnished the tabernacle as a place where the people could worship God, as it's described in Exodus 40. In fact, the tabernacle wasn't a building, it was a tent. And God met with them when they set it up following the instructions the way they were supposed to. And just after the tabernacle was filled with God's glory, Moses received instructions for the people regarding worship of God in this holy place. Leviticus is this book of instructions. So it's called Leviticus because it has to do with the laws of the Levitical priesthood. The priests in the nation of Israel were referred to as Levites. It was the tribe of Levi. And a simple way to deal with the content of these 613 laws that are very specific about everything under the sun, from civil law to a religious law, and even the kind of law that you would need to settle disputes, even in the moral sense, as well as all the laws about how to worship, are all in Leviticus, and it's basically in two parts, and this is by chapters. The first half is instructions on worship in the tabernacle, this tent that can be taken down and moved to wherever the people of God were going, and then set up in a very specific way, which of course would have the inner court and the outer court and the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant would be. And those instructions on worship in the tabernacle are in the first 16 chapters. That's right, chapters 1 through 16, instructions on exactly what to do. It's really a cool thing when you think about it, because God did not leave his people in the dark at all. He clearly communicated to them what they were to do, when they were to do it, and how they were to do all of the regulations and laws that he had set up. And of course, the sacrificial system, of course, points to that one day where Jesus would be the ultimate sacrifice. So it lays down a tremendous foundation for the Christian church in terms of how seriously they took the commands about sacrificing for the sins of the people. Well, the second part of Leviticus is instructions on how to live holy, or how to live separate as that distinct group as the people of God, from chapter 17 to chapter 26. Well, a little bit more structure in Leviticus for how you can manage the content. In chapters 1 through 7, you have laws of sacrifice. In chapters 11 through 15, you have laws of purity. In chapter 16, all 34 verses, is the explanation about the mysterious and yet highly revered Day of Atonement. And then chapter 17 to chapter 25 is laws of holiness. Again, being separate, being dedicated to God. And then the last chapter, in chapter 26, in verses 1 through 46, is blessings and curses. That is the contractual promises, how they would be blessed if they obeyed, and how they would be cursed if they didn't. Well, the prophets then would use this when the people of God did stray, to point out all the ways that they had transgressed the promises of God, even while God was always wanting to be their God and they would be his people. Well, an interesting fun fact about Leviticus is chapter 23. In chapter 23, gives you a clear list and description of all the grand feasts and festivals, Day of Atonement, Passover, Feast of Weeks, Feast of Trumpets in the law and how they were to be celebrated. So maybe you want to start reading Leviticus in chapter 23. In fact, you shouldn't expect to do any kind of chronological narrative coming out of the great story of Exodus. You could actually just read Exodus and put a pause on Leviticus and then go to Numbers, which means the desert, and then you could follow the chronology that way. But reading through the book of Leviticus helps us to understand the dedication, the commitment that the people of God had to obeying all that the Lord had commanded, just like they promised they would do at the end of Exodus. Thanks for watching Bible on the Go with Dr. Dan. If you like these videos, the best thing you can do is hit that button called subscribe. It doesn't cost us a single thing, and you only have to do it once. Praise God!